Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 24th of July, 2023. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So just a friendly reminder that there most likely will not be a refuel for the next 3 days, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because I'm going to be traveling in Sydney. Now, I say there most likely won't be one because it just depends if I have time to do one and if I kind of like have been able to keep up with everything happening while attending the various events over the next 3 days. But yeah, don't be surprised if you see one. But as I said, most likely there won't be one for the next 3 days, and I'll just catch up on everything on Friday. So just a friendly reminder there. Now, I guess jumping into the news from the weekend. So we have an update here from Parathosh all about the DevNet 8. So he said here, time for DevNet updates again. We had a Sepolia shadow fork this week. This shadow fork successfully added EIP 4844 support to Sepolia with a subset of clients. Sorry, this wasn't about the DevNets. This is actually about shadow forking the existing test nets, which obviously is something that has been happening for a little while now. We did this a lot leading up to the merge. But yeah, it seems like it was a success. Parathosh continues and says, we caught a few config-related issues early on and were able to fix it without issue. Almost all clients are able to stay at head post Cancun. This test also helped us update all of our tooling so that we're ready for Dencun shadow forks when the time comes. So yeah, it seems like everything went quite well here. Everything's moving along nicely. As I mentioned last week, there doesn't seem to be any indication that EIP 4844 is having any show-stopping moments during any of these devnets and these kind of like testnet shadow forks. Seems like everything is running smoothly. And as I mentioned last week, I still think we can expect Dencun to go live, October/November this year. There hasn't been any dates given by the core devs themselves, but this is my own estimation. As I've said before, I don't think it's going to happen in December. If it does for some reason, it'll be like very early December, obviously because of the holiday period, and it's already almost August. So definitely not going to be happening in August or September. So, it could be late October, but I'm targeting November, right? November definitely seems like the timeline there. But yeah, anyway, you can read you can read Parathosh's whole tweet thread here. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. Now, the reason why I said Tony's name is because he's back again with a tweet here all about MEV, of course, and he starts off this tweet by saying, typically, validator rewards remain quite consistent and predictable in the long term. However, the introduction of MEV boost has added an unforeseeable element to this equation. For instance, in the past 14 days, nearly 20% of validator revenue has been generated from MEV boost payments, significantly influencing Ethereum's economic dynamics. Therefore, it's sensible to consider burning a portion of the MEV boost payments instead of conducting an on-chain lottery. By doing so, it's the ETH holders, not the individual validators, who benefit from excess MEV. And this, of course, talks about MEV-burn, which is a proposal that was put forward a little while ago by Domothy and Justin Drake, I believe, are the two kind of like leads on that proposal. As far as I know, there's not an actual EIP for it yet and hasn't been kind of like thought of to be included in any future network upgrade just yet. And there's still debate on whether MEV-burn is actually needed, what the kind of trade-offs are here. But I think Tony makes a good argument here in that, 1/5 of all validator rewards is coming from MEV boost payments right now, and that distorts Ethereum's economics, right? It distorts Ethereum's crypto economics, and it definitely is not something that we want to see continue to proliferate from a network health and safety perspective. And this falls into the broader discussion around MEV and, how much MEV we want to eliminate from the actual protocol. And we're doing things like PBS and stuff like that to eliminate the negative externalities there. But, is MEV burn something worth doing? And Tony argues, yes, it is, because it rejigs the rewards and basically takes them from validators and gives them to all ETH holders. Obviously, there is a one-to-one overlap with ETH holders and validators, because to be a validator, you have to hold ETH, right? Like by the very nature, you have to hold ETH. Whether you're a solo validator or otherwise, you have exposure to ETH. So really, at the end of the day, all this is doing is, I guess, like lowering the overall potential revenue to validators, because they won't be getting most of, if not all of, the MEV payments anymore. But in turn, they get the value over the long term, ETH going up in value against USD because of that extra burn there. And this is the same kind of logic that's applied to just the fee burning in general via EIP 1559. So it's like this different school of thought. Like, would you rather have ETH going up slowly over time due to an additional burn mechanism, and also the Ethereum network become overall healthier by eliminating external externalities of MEV, or would you rather continue to earn that extra bit of yield? It's 20%, so it's not like a bit of yield. It is a healthy chunk of yield, but would you rather continue to receive that at risk of the network potentially becoming unstable at some point in the future due to MEV dynamics, distorting Ethereum's economics, but you get that extra payment there. And that's where the controversy comes in, because I think a lot of the time people generally, it doesn't matter who they are, struggle to think of the long term, right? For EIP 1559, it was easy for the community to say yes to that because it was a fee revenue that was being taken from miners and given to, I guess, like the rest of ETH holders, right? Whereas when it comes to validators or stakers, it's a different discussion because a lot of the Ethereum community overlaps with being a validator or a staker generally, right? It doesn't matter how they're doing it, there's a lot of overlap there. Whereas in the past, the miners actually weren't really part of the core Ethereum community. They were part of their own community. And really, at the end of the day, they were pure profit maximalists. They didn't really care about Ethereum or ETH, at least from my experience. Whereas validators and stakers on the network definitely do care about Ethereum and ETH. And obviously, they are exposed to staking revenue via staking their ETH in any number of different ways. And that's why there is a bit of more controversy here. In saying all of that, do I think MEV-burn will end up going into the network? I think so. It's difficult to know what form it's going to end up going in via. Is all the MEV going to be burned, or is only a portion of it, or is it going to be like a slow rollout? It begs the question of what the rollout is actually going to look like here. Is it going to be super controversial? Is the community actually going to get on board with it? I would say eventually the community would be on board with it. They may even be more on board with it in a bear market than a bull market, because in a bull market you would expect the MEV related payments to go up because of the fact that more on-chain activity leads to more fees, leads to more MEV, right? So yeah, it remains to be seen what's happening here. But, will it be coupled with another upgrade? Like, will PBS and MEV-burn go live at the same time? Because depending on how PBS is implemented, will that eliminate some of the revenue as well of MEV payments? It really depends. And it also depends on how much ETH is staked too, because is everyone's yield going to go down? What does the restaking landscape look like? There's a lot of open questions here, but if I had to guess, I would say that MEV-burn would eventually go in some form. But yeah, anyway, you can read Tony's full tweet here. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to check out. All right, just a heads up, the KZG ceremony has been extended again for another month. So if you haven't contributed yet, you will have until the 23rd of August at 11 p.m. UTC here to contribute. So you have another month starting from yesterday to contribute to the KZG ceremony if you haven't yet. And it's funny because I guess apparently, according to Carl here, there is additional demand and for people to participate as part of this round, which is kind of funny to me because because the KZG ceremony was already open for quite a while there. And it seemed like everyone who was going to contribute had already contributed. But I mean, if more people want to contribute to it and we have the time, because obviously 4844 is not going live until probably November, then why not extend it here? So yeah, I guess it's extended. You can go to the normal website to check that out there. It's at ceremony.ethereum.org. All right, Ben Edgington has published the latest chapter of his ETH2 book, which is the consensus chapter. He says here, the consensus chapter is finally coming together. Since the last update, I've added sections on both LMD Ghost and Casper FFG. And then he says the Gasper write-up coming soonish, should be fairly short, and most of the issues and fixes stuff is already covered in the annotated fork choice section. So that's mainly refactoring. So for those of you who don't know, LMD Ghost and Casper FFG are the two of the mechanisms that make up Ethereum Proof of Stake's consensus mechanism, which is called Gasper. LMD Ghost is the consensus mechanism, and Casper FFG, or Friendly Finality Gadget. I think LMD Ghost is the fork choice, and Casper FFG is the finality gadget. So that's what gives us finality here. So if you want to learn all about that and dive deeper into it, you can check out Ben Edgington's book here. It is completely free to read, and I'll link it in the YouTube description below. And he's got the different sections here. You can click on LMD Ghost. You can see here, LMD Ghost is a fork choice rule used by nodes to determine the best chain. And then Casper FFG, it adds finality to the ETH2 consensus protocol. I love that he's still calling it ETH2. For those of you who don't know, Ben Edgington had a newsletter called What's New in ETH2 for a very long time, basically until the merge. happened, talking about all of the progress that ETH2 was making. And then, of course, because we merged the two chains, it's no longer ETH2, it's just Ethereum. But he was always quite, I don't know if stubborn would be the word, but he was quite adamant about continuing to call it ETH2, which I respect his kind of like his commitment to the cause there. But yeah, you can go read these two sections if you want to learn more about this. It is quite technical, but it is interesting if you're interested in those sorts of things. So I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to check out. All right, the ETH Global Paris finalists are now live and detailed in this Twitter thread here. So there is a bunch of different projects here. I managed to check out a fair few of them. A lot of them are really, really cool, so I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to check out. But the winner of the ETH Global Paris hackathon was actually ZK Microphone, which, as detailed by one of the hackers on that project here, Manoj, he said, in 2 days, we built from scratch an anti-deepfake microphone and won ETH Global Paris. This product can prove that audio was recorded on real microphones and legitimately edited, no deepfakes, no disinformation, and you can check out more info about how they did this in their ETH Global kind of post here, which I'll link in the YouTube description below for you to check out. Now, the reason why I guess this one and why this is so interesting is because we live in a world where, you know, deep fakes using AI is prevalent and is going to become even more prevalent. And I've already seen plenty of people on the internet get fooled by these things, right? Whether they be AI voices or AI generated videos or anything like that. It's very easy to fool the casual viewer because really, if you have a particular bias, especially when it comes to things like politics, you can generally fool someone pretty easily because you just have to appeal to their bias, right? Whether it's someone saying, whether it's a politician saying something that you think that they would say anyway and that you want to hear, you're more likely to believe that than something else, right? Now, obviously, given that this is going to be a huge issue going forward for verifying what actually is real and what's fake and what's AI generated, we need tools like this. So like what Manoj and his team have built here is basically a way to prove that the audio was actually legitimate and wasn't just AI generated or generated in some other way, that it was a deep fake. And I think audio is really going to be the breakout here because usually with videos, you can kind of tell, right? It's probably much easier to tell with videos than it is with audio. With audio, I've already, it's funny, I was watching on YouTube for a little while, there was this thing where former presidents and current presidents, and the current president, so like Biden, Obama, and Trump, and sometimes George Bush would be on there, and they were like rating the video games. They were doing like tier lists of video games, or they were playing Mario Kart and bantering with each other. And I'm like, holy shit! Like these things legitimately sound real. Like, yes, if you're listening close enough, you can actually tell that it's not actually them, and obviously the context gives you that it's not actually them. Then those people are never playing Mario Kart together, right? But just listening to the audio itself, ignoring the kind of video aspect of it, because there wasn't actually a video, it was just all audio, and then the video would be like the Mario Kart track or something like that, you could legitimately believe that it was their voices. So we need a way to basically determine what's real and what's fake in this AI world, where AI is just going to keep getting better and better, and there's going to be better and better deep fakes. And I guess like that's why this project won here, because it is an innovative project using zero knowledge technology to basically do this. Now, if you want to know exactly how they've done this, you can read the ETH Global post here, and you can read the source code and everything if that's your jam. I'll link this in the YouTube description below. But definitely something that is very important going forward for not only the crypto ecosystem, but I think the world at large. All right, so Nexus Mutual over the weekend apparently swapped $27.3 million worth of their ETH for a Rocket Pool ETH. So that's 14,390 ETH that was swapped into our ETH, and the trade took place on CowSwap, of course, because CowSwap is currently the best way to do big on-chain trades. I've used CowSwap a bunch of times for big on-chain trades myself. Definitely not $27.3 million worth, but I always default to using it because it really is the best when it comes to kind of being MEV resistant and doing those large trades and executing those large trades with decent liquidity and very minimal slippage here. So not trying to shield CowSwap too much here, but it's legitimately a really great product, and I've used it a bunch of times, and I just love using it. Every time I've used it, I've had a good experience with it. But yeah, this is pretty cool because obviously we want to see decentralized staking ecosystems continue to grow, and we want to see new ETH coming into staking as well, not into the existing kind of like large products like Lido, Coinbase, and Binance. We want to see that going into the minority products. And I've said before that I think a lot of the growth for the minority products is going to come from new ETH rather than ETH being shuffled from one service to the other, at least over the short term. I believe longer term, you'll definitely see a reshuffling. And honestly, over the last couple of months, we've already seen a pretty big reshuffling from like Coinbase and Binance to these other protocols. But in terms of getting growth on these newer protocols, I think that they should go for the new ETH, the ETH that hasn't been staked yet, especially from DAOs like Nexus Mutual, from projects that have large ETH treasuries that want to put that ETH to work. And they've done that via Rocket Pool. So just very cool to see this year, and very cool to see Rocket Pool continuing to grow and continuing to get more ETH staked with the service. All right, so Optimism apparently is moving forward with 2 proposals to add ZK proofs to the OP stack. Man, how long have I been saying this to you guys for? It's funny because I remember having this discussion with people and talking about this on the Refuel all the way back in maybe 2021, I think, or even earlier than that, maybe 2020, where everyone was saying to me, you know, what's the point of optimistic rollups if we're going to have ZK rollups soon, or if we're going to have ZK AVMs? You know, what's the point of optimistic rollups? And I basically said to them, even back then, I said, it's much easier for an optimistic rollup that has an existing ecosystem already to add ZK proofs, to add validity proofs, than it is for a new ZK rollup or a new ZK AVM to form a community around them. And that's exactly what's happening with Optimism and with Arbitrum. They're adding these ZK proof capabilities to their networks in order to basically become a ZK rollup or a validity rollup, depending on what school of terminology you subscribe to there. And with these 2 proposals that Optimism is looking at come from O1 Labs and Risk Zero. So these ZK proofs will be added to all OP chains. It won't just be the OP mainnets. It'll be added to the OP stack, I guess, tech stack that all of the OP chains can tap into. So that includes things like Base, that includes newer chains like Avo that I've talked about before. And any other kind of chains that are building using the OP stack, they'll be able, once this is kind of approved, they'll be able to use ZK proofs instead of fraud proofs, I should say, from my understanding here, which basically makes these things ZK rollups, which, again, as I've said for quite a while now, it was much easier for the optimistic rollups to do this than it is for the ZK rollups to grow their own ecosystems. And Optimism and Arbitrum definitely both have big ecosystems, and we can expect Base to be a really big ecosystem once it goes live. And it's going live soon, by the way. We're only probably a couple weeks out from it going live for users. It is live for developers right now, but for users, only a couple weeks away there. So great to see this. Now, I'll link this article in the YouTube description below for you to check out. There's a GitHub repo you can check out, basically detailing the requests for products for these things and how this will all work. This is just super exciting for me, honestly, because as I've said, I've been talking about this for a long time, but I'm also very curious to see what the future of optimistic rollups looks like, because if you've been paying attention, pretty much everyone is building a ZK rollup or a ZK AVM. No one is really building optimistic rollups anymore, or a hybrid, right? A hybrid of a ZK rollup and an optimistic rollup. Polygon had optimistic rollups on their roadmap for a while, but then they basically said, you know what? Optimistic rollups, they're cool, but it's not worth our time to focus on this, because we should just focus on ZK rollups and ZK technology, because that's the future. And that's what they did, right? And pretty much like 90%, 95% of the projects that you see coming out, the layer 2 projects, are all based on ZK rollups, or they're using the OP stack or the Arbitrum stack, knowing that it's going to be turned into a ZK rollup eventually, or there'll be the ability to do that there. And I think that's just the way the way this is going to go. And I think that when it comes to Optimism in particular, it seems like they may actually just skip over fraud proofs altogether, because they don't have a fraud proof system at all on OP mainnet or otherwise right now. So are they just going to abandon their fraud proof system and just go straight to validity proofs and to ZK proofs? I think it's potentially yes, because it doesn't make sense for them to continue to work on something that is going to be obsoleted pretty soon. So I know I've criticized them, and a lot of people have criticized Optimism in the past for not having fraud proofs at all, but in their eyes, they're probably like, you know what, we'll deal with the criticism, we'll deal with the fact that we won't have fraud proofs, but we'll get these ZK proofs implemented, and then we'll just leapfrog over it. And I think that's what Arbitrum will do as well. Maybe they won't do permissionless fraud proofs. They'll just change to like validity proofs and do permissionless stuff there. Remains to be seen, but that makes more sense to me, at least anyway. So yeah, anyway, you can check out this article for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, last up here, and I've left a bit of time here because this is something that I really wanted to discuss today. Rhett Ship here from the Gravatar protocol asked a question today on Twitter. He said, for which of the following do you think it is okay to have a winner-take-all or winner-take-most, and why? And then he lists a bunch of things such as L1s, L2s, stablecoins, DEXs, lending, and liquid staking. So I think that the answer is no to all of these generally. But I think the question needs to be reframed a little bit here, because an L1 there's different meanings to an L1, right? Like an L1 we know as, Bitcoin, Ethereum, these alt L1s or whatever you want to call them out there, all these things, right? But they're not all created equal. Just as I said last week, the L2s aren't created equal. The L1s aren't either, right? There is a reason why Ethereum L1 is as big as it is and has the most liquidity, has the most money on there, is the most secure, all that sorts of stuff there, right? There's a reason why people store their wealth on there rather than storing their wealth on some random L1 that has basically no activity on it and it can be 51% attacked to death, like Ethereum Classic, for example. And the reason is because Ethereum gives you better settlement guarantees and better settlement insurances and better credible neutrality, better censorship resistant by far than any of these other L1s. So I think the question of should an L1 be a winner take all or a winner take most should be split up into two parts. There's the L1s just generally, right? Then there are the L1s that are settlement layers. And these are things like Bitcoin and Ethereum. So when it comes to an L1 as a settlement layer, I do believe that it should be a winner take all, if not winner take most. Now, I'm not just saying this because people may call me an ETH maxi for saying this or my ETH bags, whatever it is. I'm not saying this because of that. I'm saying this because think about what a settlement layer is and think about what a good settlement layer is and something that the world can trust. Like if you want to be a global settlement layer, think about how much trust people have to have in that thing for them to want to store their wealth on that, for them to want to do economic transactions on there, for them to have assurances that it's going to be around in decades from now, and then that it's not just going to fade by the wayside, or it's not just going to be attacked, or it's secure, it's censorship resistant, so they're not going to get censored on there. Now, out of all the L1s out there, Ethereum is really the only one that gives you those guarantees. It has incredible security, right? It has incredible economic security, crypto economic security. It has incredible censorship resistance. It literally defied basically censorship that was enforced by or is enforced by the US government with the OFAC stuff, right? It survived that and thrived and basically killed that. I believe that the out of all the relays, only 30% or something are censoring. So you basically have a pretty good chance within a block or two of getting your transaction included, and that's only censoring the OFAC transactions, not the Tornado Cash transactions, right? That's not censoring everything. So you've got that. You've got the credible neutrality that Ethereum has built up over the years. It's decentralized as hell, right? There are different teams all over the world building up the roadmap, right? Independent funding, thousands and thousands of node operators, very healthy generally on that front as well. So you have all of that, right? So that means that people can trust it as a global settlement layer. They can trust that they can store their wealth on there today and it'll be there tomorrow. They can trust that when they make a transaction, it's not going to be censored. They can trust that other big institutions in the world will want to use it and there'll be liquidity there for them. They'll be able to do these payments. People will accept the Ethereum network and stuff like that, right? And then on top of that, you have L2s and above that want to build on something that they can trust will be there tomorrow, that won't rug them, that won't go offline on them, that will allow them to post their proofs and data to the chain, that will be credibly neutral. So it doesn't matter what entity it is, they have to trust that that settlement layer will give them the settlement guarantees and assurances that they expect. That, as I said, will not censor them, will secure their transactions, will allow them to settle whatever value they want or settle whatever they want on the chain. So in that world, I do believe that Ethereum as a settlement layer should be a winner take all. And it actually has been to this point. I'm not including Bitcoin in this because Bitcoin can't do what Ethereum can do. Bitcoin really has, for better or worse, become a digital gold, right? And it's never going to be a payments network in my eyes. Lightning Network is a joke, but it will definitely be and continue to be a store of value for a lot of people, right? It has that same kind of property or similar properties that Ethereum does in terms of like censorship resistance, credible neutrality, stuff like that, right? decentralization, all that good stuff there. Whereas Ethereum has that, but so much more, because Ethereum can be a payments network. It can host L2s that can be payments networks on it, right? It can do everything. Because it has smart contracts, because it has a virtual machine, it can do basically everything you want it to do. Yes, there's a cost to it, and that's why we have L2s to bring that cost down. But generally, you pay for what you get, essentially there. So in that world, if you just exclude Bitcoin here, if you just look at the value of Ethereum L1 versus every other L1 out there, and you can kind of like look at CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap and actually see this. If I go down the list here, ignoring BNB, as I said before, I ignore BNB because BNB isn't just Binance Smart Chain, it is also Binance the Exchange, and I do believe that BNB gets most of its value from Binance the Exchange rather than BSC. And then XRP, I generally ignore as well for various different reasons. I don't even know what XRP really is or is trying to be. At the end of the day, I don't consider XRP or Ripple to be a scam, but it is really just useless. Like, I just don't see it doing anything, but it has such a large value for whatever reason. But if we exclude that, if we exclude BNB, next on the list would be Cardano. Cardano is worth $11 billion. Ethereum is worth $225 billion. So it is worth like 22 times more than Cardano is worth, right? So the market is already telling you that Ethereum is the winner take all of the, I guess, kind of settlement layer thing, or smart contract, or L1 generally kind of thing here. So I think, as I said, when it comes to settlement layer, it's a winner take all here. The rest of it, definitely not going to be winner take all. L2s, as I said before, you have to split this up as well. Generalized L2s, not going to be very many of them that succeed. There's going to be probably less than 5 that take all of the activity. App chains, different story, right? There's going to be thousands of those things. I don't know what the distribution of activity is going to look like on those, but there's going to be lots of those. Stablecoins, it seems to be a winner take most right now because Tether obviously is huge. It's at $83 billion market cap, whereas USDC is $27 billion. But I don't know. I think it's still early to tell on there. It might be a winner take most just because of liquidity reasons. We'll have to see. DEXs, it does seem like a winner take most because Uniswap is still leading. Still probably too early. Lending definitely doesn't seem to be winner take most. Lending is it has a few big players in there like Aave and Compound and a bunch of other money markets as well. And then liquid staking, again, remains to be seen. Right now, it definitely is a winner take most with Lido, but as I've said before, I still think we need to give it a couple of years before we can determine any kind of like real insight into this, because Lido came first, had a huge head start. Liquidity begets liquidity, but there are more and more of these things coming online all the time. So it remains to be seen in that realm there. But the question was, which is it okay to have a winner take all and most? I don't think it's okay to have a winner take all for L2s, stablecoins, DEXs, lending, or liquid staking. I do think it's fine for there to be a winner take all or most for a settlement layer L1, and for an L1 generally, I don't know, because honestly, I'm bearish on pretty much all L1s except Ethereum and maybe Bitcoin, but Bitcoin is its own beast, so I don't think it's really relevant to my opinions on things. But yeah, hopefully that gives you a bit of extra insight into how I think about these things and how I think about settlement layers and settlement guarantees and how that is the most important thing. Because at the end of the day, if you want to onboard the world includes various different entities and individual and parties, right? There's individuals, there's corporates, there's enterprises, there's governments. They're not going to just settle their like real things. Maybe they'll do a proof of concept, but they're not going to settle their real value on a unknown kind of layer 1 or some random layer 1. They're going to want to go with the thing that gives them the best security guarantees, that gives them the best settlement assurances, that they have confidence will be here in decades to come, if not centuries to come, right? Rather than something that they have zero faith in. It is like a flash in the pan thing that may only last a few months during a bull market and then fall by the wayside. And there's been plenty of those in the past, guys. There are like probably over 100 L1s, and most of them, pretty much all of them, are irrelevant, right? There are a few still hanging on right now, but it's too early to tell if they're going to be around in a few years, right? So we're going to have to see through various market cycles. But yeah, generally that's my take on all of that. But I think that's going to be it for today. And just a reminder again, there's probably not going to be a refill for the next 3 days. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll probably catch you all on Friday. Thanks everyone.